The thing you're most afraid of and the thing you want most share an address. They live in the same part of your brain, run on the same energy, and, if you trace them back far enough, they started as the same impulse. This is one of the oldest ideas in recorded philosophy, and modern psychology keeps accidentally proving it right. By the end of this, you'll understand why the intensity of your fear is actually a map to what matters most to you. And if you've been running from something for years, you're about to see exactly what you've been running toward the entire time. Thousands of years ago, a set of teachings emerged in Egypt attributed to Hermes Trismegistus. One of those teachings, the Principle of Polarity, makes a claim that sounds simple until you sit with it. Everything is dual. Everything has poles. Opposites are identical in nature, differing only in degree. Heat and cold feel like two separate things. They're one thing. Temperature, measured at different points. The same thermometer registers both. Love and hate feel like opposites. But think about who you've hated. Strangers? Rarely. The people who provoke genuine hatred are almost always people you cared about deeply. The intensity was already there. It just rotated. This is where it gets personal. Take your worst fear, the one that sits in your chest at 3 a.m. Maybe it's public humiliation. Maybe it's dying without having mattered. Maybe it's being truly seen by someone and watching them leave anyway. Now flip it. The fear of being unseen is the desire for deep connection. The fear of failure is the desire for meaningful achievement. The fear of abandonment is the desire for love that stays. Same spectrum, same energy, different degree. The ancient Hermetic teachers had a term for working with this: mental transmutation. The idea was that you could learn to slide along the polarity the way you'd adjust a dial. You couldn't jump from one category to an unrelated one. You can't transmute fear into hunger or anger into sleepiness. Those are different spectrums entirely. But you could move along the spectrum you were already on. Fear could become excitement. Hatred could soften back toward caring. Grief, which terrifies most people, could be recognized as the residue of enormous love. The mystics figured this out through contemplation. Then a few thousand years later, researchers started measuring it. In the 1960s, psychologists Stanley Schachter and Jerome Singer ran an experiment that shouldn't have worked. They injected subjects with adrenaline and then placed them in different social situations. Some were put in a room with someone acting euphoric. Others were put with someone acting angry. The subjects who didn't know they'd been given adrenaline interpreted their racing hearts and flushed skin according to context. Same chemical, same physiological response. Completely different emotional experience depending on the frame. The body generates arousal, raw, undifferentiated arousal. Your brain decides what to call it. That racing heartbeat before a job interview and that racing heartbeat before a first kiss. Physiologically, they're nearly identical. Your palms sweat the same way. Your breathing shallows the same way. One you label terror, the other you label excitement. The Hermetic teachers would have nodded. Same pole, different degree. Your labeling is the dial. So why does this matter beyond philosophy? Because most people spend their entire lives trying to eliminate one end of a spectrum while chasing the other. They want confidence, but refuse to tolerate vulnerability. They want intimacy, but engineer every interaction to avoid rejection. They want creative success, but structure their lives to make failure impossible. And the Principle of Polarity says that's like wanting summer but trying to abolish heat. The thing you're avoiding and the thing you're chasing are connected at the root. Pull one out, and the other comes with it. People who successfully avoid all risk of rejection also eliminate any chance of genuine closeness. People who insulate themselves from failure lose access to the kind of ambitious swings that make careers meaningful. The spectrum doesn't let you keep one end and discard the other. It's sold as a unit. Here's where it gets stranger. The intensity of your fear is a direct measurement of the desire underneath it. Small fears point to small wants. The things that terrify you at a bone-deep, keep you up at night level are pointing, with that same bone-deep intensity, at something you want so badly you can barely admit it to yourself. Think about stage fright. People who genuinely don't care about performing don't get stage fright. The fear scales in exact proportion to how much the performance means. An open mic at a bar you'll never visit again? Mild nerves. Your lifelong dream of stand-up comedy, in front of an audience that includes everyone you respect, the fear becomes almost paralyzing. Same activity. The variable is how much you care. The fear is the caring wearing a different outfit. This reframes the entire relationship with fear. The standard advice, feel the fear and do it anyway, treats fear as an obstacle between you and the goal. The polarity principle suggests something more radical. The fear is the goal, experienced from the opposite end. You don't push through it. You recognize it as desire turned inside out, and you rotate. There's a practice embedded in this. The Hermetic texts called it the art of polarization. When you feel fear rising, you trace it to its source, the deep want underneath, and you hold both in your mind simultaneously. The fear of public speaking and the desire to have your voice heard, the fear of starting a business and the desire to build something yours. When you hold both poles at once, something shifts. The energy doesn't disappear. It reorganizes. Your body is still flooded with arousal, still buzzing with the significance of the moment. But the frame loosens, the dial starts to move. Athletes talk about this without using hermetic language. The shift from pre-competition dread to pre-competition focus often happens in a single breath. The energy is identical. What changes is the interpretation, from something terrible might happen to something that matters is about to happen. One sentence. Same arousal, reframed. Now, there's a legitimate counter-argument. A critic would say, this is just cognitive reappraisal dressed in mystical robes, and they'd be partly right. Modern therapeutic techniques like reappraisal do exactly this. Reframe the meaning of a physiological state to change the emotional experience. The overlap with ancient Hermetic teaching is genuine. But reducing polarity to a therapy technique misses the deeper architecture. Reappraisal asks, can I think about this differently? Polarity asks, what if the different feeling I want is already present in the feeling I have? One changes interpretation. The other says the interpretation was always incomplete. The practical difference matters. Reappraisal requires effort. You're fighting the current emotional state to install a new one. Polarization says you're already on the spectrum. You're already experiencing the energy of what you want. You just need to recognize it. That recognition, when it lands, doesn't feel like effort. It feels like remembering. You've experienced this. You know the moment when nervousness about a trip suddenly flips to anticipation, and you can't tell exactly when it happened. One minute you're anxious about the flight, the packing, the unknowns. The next minute, the same unknowns feel like possibility. Your body didn't change. Your situation didn't change. Something in the framing shifted, and the entire emotional tone reversed without any conscious exertion. That's polarization happening on its own. The Hermetic argument is that you can learn to do it deliberately. The implications reach further than personal fear management. Every intense negative emotion you carry is sitting on a spectrum with something you deeply value. Jealousy points toward a standard of achievement you haven't acknowledged. Anger points toward a boundary you care about protecting. Shame points toward a version of yourself you're desperate to embody. These aren't separate problems requiring separate solutions. They're signals from the same source, arriving through different ends of the wire. The people who seem most fearless, the ones who quit stable jobs to pursue art, who say the vulnerable thing first, who build without permission, aren't operating with less fear. Interviews with extreme athletes, founders, performers, and combat veterans reveal the same pattern. The fear is enormous. What differs is the relationship. They've learned, consciously or otherwise, to feel the fear as evidence of desire, rather than evidence of danger. The alarm is ringing, and they hear it as a starting bell. There's a journal entry attributed to Hermes Trismegistus that scholars still argue about. The line reads, "To change your mood, change your polarity." 7 words, the entire teaching, compressed. Your worst fear already contains the coordinates of your deepest want. The intensity you feel when you imagine the thing going wrong is the same intensity you'd feel if it went right. Same voltage. The wiring just runs in 2 directions. So the next time fear arrives, real fear, the kind with weight behind it, try something counterintuitive. Instead of asking how to get rid of it, ask what it would feel like to want this badly, because you already do. The fear just got to the door first. And that same mechanism, the spectrum that connects opposites through shared intensity, explains why grief can sometimes feel indistinguishable from gratitude, which might be the most uncomfortable polarity.